different ball game right there.
He said his egg, so that probably, he probably be a single egg.
This one don't seem to be acting right. What bun? I ain't seen him.
His truck right there.
I know it, but I ain't seen him. Probably hiding in the back doing trustee stuff.
Yeah, he get hot like that, baby. Yeah, just too good.
Didn't when we gonna take these off in the church?
Never. I don't know.
Never.
I don't know, man. Ain't no time soon, baby. I don't know. Every time you turn around, they say something coming behind it. Every time you take another booster shot. I don't know.
Speaking of trustees,
Hey, right there. Man, you got all right, man.
I wouldn't pick on that.
Oh, no.
My beloved trustee. Why would I pick on him?
I don't know. Feel like ain't man.
Richard's the only one I can't pick on. He raised a nation like me.
Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. It's Wednesday, April 6th. It's 7 o'clock at night. So our first opportunity during the month of April to get together for our regular Wednesday evening Bible study. And we're glad for those of you who have gathered one way or another to be a part of our conversation. And we begin our time together in prayer. Almighty God, we are grateful for the gift of your word, a lamp for our feet, a light for our path, the thing that provides direction and guidance for us, the document that expresses your affection for us, and the same one that we turn to in search of correction. Breathe on us tonight that we would understand your word more fully, to become better witnesses for you in all that we say and do. In the name of Christ our Savior and Lord we pray. Amen. Last week we began our conversation in the 12th chapter of the book of Romans on being responsible, and it's appropriate for us. We call ourselves the responsible church, and we'll begin first of all by reading through the first 12 verses, and then we'll go back and have a conversation. Can we have them, the first 12, please, Lorna?
Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. For by grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourselves more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with somber judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesizing, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourself. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with.
We're going to divide these 12 verses into 3 parts. We're going to first talk about verse 1 and its contents. We're going to talk about give your body to God. And the second verse we're going to take as verse 2 is giving your mind to God. And for the remaining verses, we're going to talk about giving your life to God. It's a proverbial formula for responsible living. It's the formula for coming to the point of having a dedicated life. Last week we asked the question about dedication, and I asked you questions about what dedication looks like. And in other words than these, we came to the conclusion that to be dedicated is to show up. To be dedicated is to be in place. To be dedicated is to be committed and to perform according to your commitment. So first of all, if a person were trying to prove to Paul, at least, that he or she was dedicated, that he or she was responsible, Paul says, here's what I look for. Present your bodies a living sacrifice. The King James Version says, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. We have come to understand that to offer your body as a reasonable service really means to watch how you walk. It's a matter of how you participate, how we carry ourselves in the presence of God. In order to be declared righteous in the sight of God, it is not enough to follow the steps of the law. It is not enough simply to know that you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's. It's not enough, not a matter of making sure that you're a good person, that you treat everybody right, that you do anything else that is said in that song about trusting in God except believing in God. For what we believe is that God's plan is not a plan that can be frustrated. It cannot be overturned. There's no insurrection. The last insurrection that was against God didn't turn out well at all. And my recommendation would be to avoid anything that seems like insurrectionist behavior when it comes to trying to frustrate or undo the plan of God. To do otherwise would suggest that we really don't believe God can finish what he started, that we really don't believe that God is able to keep things under control. We really don't believe that God can do anything but fail. And we believe all those things. We believe that everything is under God's control. We believe that God can do anything but fail or lie, as Reverend Bell, I think, pointed out last week. So what does it look like when you give your body to God? Present your body a living sacrifice. What does that look like? Go ahead.
Service to God, a servant.
Mm-hmm. Serving God, okay. Can you say more than that?
Say that. Well, when when you become a servant of God, you become obedient to God. You become more willing to do the things that pleases God. I think that's it I have.
How do you know when your body has been surrendered to God? You need a microphone, baby. I'm sorry to have to tell you that every.
I was thinking maybe it's pretty much how you don't get frustrated. You don't get confrontated or anything like that. You're calm, you're relaxed. I guess
You think so?
Yeah, see, well, I think that's the way I am. I don't.
Well, okay. Go ahead, Reverend.
I think that to give your body, make yourself a living sacrifice, is to do when you really don't feel like doing. You go when you really want to stay home and rest. When there is a need for out there, whatever that need is, and you can be there, you can help, but you really don't feel like it. You know, your mind want to do it, but your body just don't, but you do it anyway. That's, I believe that when we're sacrificing how we feel to do the service of God.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Also, it's sacrificing those humanly desires that you have. Not smoking, not drinking, all those things that you want to do, but you don't do them because you know it's not pleasing to God.
Okay.
Because your body is a temple.
There you go. That's how you know that it is not pleasing to God, because you know that it's in your body where God lives. And so to put a cigarette in your mouth is like putting a Marlboro. They still make Marlboro? It's like putting a Marlboro in God's mouth. So when you think about the coming of the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem, in order to live among us, in order to teach us what he teaches us, in order to do the things he did, he needed a body. He needed a body in order to relate to us. And so according to the second chapter in Philippians, a body was prepared, and he came to live among us. Now we call it the incarnation. To be incarnate is to be in flesh. And when you go to Chipotle to order food, they'll ask you whether you want chicken or carne. It's meat, it's beef, it's flesh. And so the word incarnate means in flesh, now flesh, presenting, being in flesh. So he became, and he presented himself in the form of a human. He became one of us. He was born in time the same way that we were. After 9 months, he was born, and he made the time from his birth to his death, one day at a time, like we do, like humans do. And he shows us the way. He shows us how to live. He teaches us how to live. And then he works miracles among us during his presence. That's the stuff that Jesus did between his 30th year and the day of his death. Those are the miracles that are recorded. Those are all the things he did. John says that there's not room enough in the Bible to write down everything he did. But he writes a lot of what Jesus did. And in order to do the work, he had to be incarnate. He had to become human. Now, used to hear it more years ago than we do anymore, but there used to be a saying, God has no hands but our hands. And God has no feet but our feet, meaning that God does his work in the world and for the world through us. And how does he do that? He uses our hands. It's easy for him to use our hands because he lives within us. But he won't intrude to come to live in us. And so Paul says, present your body. God won't take your body from you. He gives us the free will, the choice. The pollen is killing me. He gives us the choice for what we do with the body that he gives to us. When Samuel was born, his mother decided to give Samuel's body back to God. And so she took the baby to the temple and dedicated him. That's what we do. We're going to dedicate a baby on the third Sunday of this month, after the fashion of Mary and Joseph dedicating Jesus, after the fashion of Hannah and Elkanah dedicating their baby. And so God gives us the opportunity, the choice, whether we will present our bodies to him or not. And it's a decision. In Baptist churches, we practice what we call believer's baptism, meaning that we won't baptize anyone who does not believe. Those who believe present themselves in response to an invitation of the one who says, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. After the fashion of as many as believe in him, to them he gives the power to become the children of God. But you have the power to become God's child. You get to decide to become God's child. So Paul says, I plead with you, I urge you, I beseech you to present your body a living sacrifice. All of it, all of you, your whole self belongs to God. So if you don't present your body a living sacrifice, then you deprive God of what God owns. And he gives us the ability to choose or to do so or not to do so. And Paul's urging is to choose to do so, to choose to give yourself to him. Now, Isaac is an example of a living sacrifice, because Isaac is in response to his father, Abraham, or at that time, Abram, lays himself on the altar and says to his father, Abraham, so where the meat at? Where's the ram? I see the fire, I see the wood. Well, where's the ram? And Abraham's response is, God will provide himself a ram. And he does. And the old man looks, the patriarch Abram looks around, and he finds a ram caught in a bush. And that becomes the animal for the sacrifice. And so that Isaac never literally dies. He figuratively dies because he lays himself on the altar and awaits his father to bring down the hand with his raised knife and take the life of his own son. It's interesting to think about it, because God didn't tell Isaac to go up the mountain with his daddy and be sacrificed. He told his daddy. So here's the boy with faith and confidence in his father, Abraham. And his father has confidence in God. And the two of them come away from that experience, and Isaac continues to live his life. And so he becomes an image of a sacrifice that continues to live. But the perfect sacrifice is the sacrifice of Jesus, the perfect man, the one who lived in spite of every temptation to rob God of his body, of his human body, in spite of every temptation when he was hungry to do what he wanted, to make bread show up or make food show up. I'm always moved by that, the devil's temptation that if you are who you say you are, command these stones to become bread. And what comes to my mind is, if he is who he says he is, he commanded them to be stones. Because in creation, John says, the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. And so clearly, Jesus has power. He withholds his authority until the time of his resurrection, when he says, all authority is given unto me in heaven and earth. Now, having accomplished the thing that he came to the earth, the thing that he was incarnate to do, to teach, to guide, to work, to perform miracles, to encourage, to inspire, to influence. He did all those things in his body. He couldn't have done those things had he had not a body. It would have been God by the Spirit moving, but so many people that I know are not really all that convinced by things that they don't see, but they can be convinced by things that they do see and things that they do hear. And so though God could have done everything that was done for those years that Jesus was on the earth without ever coming down, by speaking, he said in the beginning, let there be light, and there was light. He could say, let there be darkness, and guess what would happen? Yeah, so God moves, and he gives to human beings, uniquely to human beings, the privilege of self-will, the privilege of deciding, the privilege of presenting ourselves or withholding ourselves, the privilege of giving in or giving out. And he says, Paul says, I urge you, this is the right way to go. Give your body a living sacrifice. Let God have your hands and your feet and your eyes and your talents and your abilities and your gifts and your treasures. Let God have all of that. Give yourself to God. Let him use your hands, your feet, your legs. Let him use your strength, your abilities. Present your body a living sacrifice. That's your reasonable act of service. And the use of the word service in the King James and some other translations is often confusing to people, because what the word appears in the Greek or Aramaic language would have been worship. So if it's right, if it's reasonable, if it makes sense for us to give ourselves to God, then we find ourselves doing the kinds of things that God does. And Jesus shows us the kinds of things that God does. He says, love your neighbor, love God, love your neighbor, love yourself. Behave lovingly. And Jesus said that's the most important thing you could do, is to learn to behave lovingly. Now, what does loving living look like? I bet you can't say that fast 3 times. What does loving living look like? Ron's going to give me a short answer. He says service. Looks like what?
It looks like it's caring for people. And loving
Caring
them.
for people.
Yeah. But I want to go back to the body for a second.
To the what?
To the body. When we say the body,
The body, living body,
it got to be the first thing because that's the only thing we got to give God. Because He made us out the dust. So the dust came from the body. So I'm looking at the situation where He said to make a living sacrifice, the body. That's the first thing we should give Him because that's the only thing we can give Him because He made us anyhow.
Well, let's see if that's the only thing you can give Him.
Well, I'm talking about
In this verse,
Right.
yeah, then that's where you got to begin.
Right.
So we begin with
With
what
the
He
body.
gives us first. What He gives us first is this.
That's right.
And so he says, now, give it back to me. So I ask myself, well, how do I do that? And if we skip down like Linda Howley likes to do, skip to the bottom, he'll say in teaching, in prophesying, in helping, in giving. And so he gives us at the end the clue to what a dedicated life looks like, what a life dedicated to God looks like. It begins with giving God your body, giving yourself to be used by God, giving yourself to feed the hungry. That's what God does. He befriends the stranger. He comforts the brokenhearted. He embraces the people who are prickly and not so embraceable. He loves the people who are hard to love. He cares for people who need care. He pays attention to people who feel put out, lonely, alone, depressed, oppressed. He comes to the aid of others. He comes to the aid of people. He is helpful. When I was a scout 100 years ago, we learned some things. I don't even remember them all. Scout is trustworthy, loyal, friendly, and brave, clean, and reverent. There's some between friendly and brave, clean, and reverent. I don't remember them off my head right now. But they are virtues that describe behavior. What do I do with my body? I behave in a manner that is trustworthy. I practice loyalty. I am friendly. I'm cheerful. I'm thrifty. I'm brave, courageous. I'm reverent, respectful. So to give your body to God is to put yourself in position for God to use yourself to glorify Himself, so that when people see our works, they glorify our Father. So it's not my hands that do the work. It's the Spirit of God working through me. It's not my mind that does the teaching. It's the Spirit of God teaching through me. And so I have surrendered my body. I've said, okay, Lord, I've been set apart. I've been consecrated. I've been sanctified. I've been dedicated to God's service. And so I have given God my body for God and allowed God to have reign, to have rule, to be God in the world, to be an incarnation of God's Spirit. Just as Jesus needed His body to work in the world, his human body as the man from Nazareth, he needs his presence in my body to continue the work that Jesus started. So when he saw a man who was lame, he healed him. Now, I can't heal him. So he doesn't ask me to do what I can't. He asks me to do what I can. When he sees the woman with the issue of blood, he heals her. I don't know where to start with a hemorrhage. So he doesn't ask me to do that. But he asks me to do what I can. You remember the story of the four men who have a lame friend, and they know that if they can get their friend to Jesus, he can be healed. And so they try to get in through the front door and try to get in through the window, and they try to get in through the back door, and they can't. But they say, man, we got to get this man inside somehow. And what they could do was tear the roof off somebody's house and lower the man into the presence of Jesus. So there may be some things that I can't do to put someone who is infirm, someone who's sick, someone who's struggling, someone who's hungry, someone who's thirsty in the presence of Jesus, but there's some things that I can do to put them in his presence. And so I give him my body and say, Lord, make it happen. And I'm happy to be a part of the process. It's reasonable that with all God has done for me, that I should do that. It's right, because God has been merciful toward me. He didn't deal with me like he could have, but he was merciful. He continues to be merciful. And because God continues to be merciful, I am called to continue to surrender myself, my body, to him. Am I making sense? Yeah. So it's right and reasonable of us to present our bodies that way, because in so doing we demonstrate our reverence to God. And our reverence to God is demonstrated by our acts of worship. So it's not 11 to 1, 11 to 12:30 on a Sunday thing alone, but it's a matter of worshiping God and demonstrating our recognition of the goodness of God, of the mercy of God, by how we behave in between the Sundays. It's not just a Sunday, it's the in-between Sundays. It's reasonable, it's right that if God gives me another chance on another day, that in that time I should acknowledge the fact that I didn't wake myself up, that I didn't keep myself safe, but God does it for me. And so Paul's first way to demonstrate a life of dedication, a life of responsibility, is if you present your body over and over, a living sacrifice. See, when in the Old Testament they killed a dove or a duck or a goat or another animal, a sheep, for sacrifice, the sacrifice was over when the animal was burned. Yeah, when the animal was dead, the sacrifice is done. And so, if you want to make another sacrifice, you got to get another bird. You got to get another animal. And so Paul says, keep this thing going. Don't let the sacrifice be over when the duck dies, or the bird dies or the animal dies because it's inefficient, it's insufficient. Yes, Reverend.
And in my mind, I'm trying to, the worship, the act of worship, and the act, when we enter in here, that's one form of the act of worship. But when we're out there, our daily lives, that service is the genuine form of act of worship.
Go ahead.
Because when we enter into a true worship, a living sacrifice, everything we do, we're worshiping him. Every service that we render to my brother, to my sister, that's an act of worshiping him. And that act of worship, thank you, that act of worship is going outside. But when I enter in here, that act of worship is to build me up.
That's when we worship together as corporate worship. As corporate worship, we get together to worship. But when we worship him individually, that's private worship. That's personal worship. And so this is an invitation for, it's interesting, I think you're going to see it as we go through these verses. It's interesting because there are two different ways to think about this, about the recipients of Paul's address. On the one hand, he speaks to an individual. In the other hand, he speaks to the church, to the whole body of Christ. Imagine a world where everybody would have this kind of commitment. Everybody in the world would have this kind of commitment. If everyone were to treat everyone else to the best of their ability, if everyone with a gift used their gift not only for themselves, but for the benefit of others. In the world, yeah. Heaven must be like this. Yeah, in the words of Sam Cooke, what a wonderful world this would be. Yeah. So the invitation goes to everybody. The invitation is for everybody to present themselves. It's tough to do, isn't it? Constantly to be in worship mode. Constantly looking for something good to do. Because every time I think I've found something good to do, somebody distracts me. Knocks my hand off the plow, my feet off the road. So I have to get back again. Fortunately, if I present my body a living sacrifice, then I'm in position to make the correction and adjust my posture and make sure that I've been doing it right. And I find the way to that in verse 2. Lorna Doone. Verse 2.
Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will.
There you go. Do not conform. Do not become like the world. Don't persist. Don't insist on keeping on doing wrong. That's what the world does. But be changed. Be transformed by giving God your mind. You've already given him your body. But he can work with your body. But he needs your mind in order to use your body. Yes, Reverend. She's running to get that mask off.
Yes. The message says, don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out.
You like that? Yeah. It's easy. I have a bad problem with floaters in my eyes. They look bloody from my side. And when it seemed like I got the first one and it seemed to be getting so much bigger and bigger, and it looked like I'm looking through a bloody curtain. The doctor told me, your mind will get used to it, and you'll get to a place where you won't even know it's there. Now that's the big joker in this eye. Well, this year I got one in this eye, and my mind hadn't gotten used to this one yet. My mind has conformed. It's adjusted. It's decided that this is normal, and it looks past that floater unless I look for it. But on this side, if I'm walking with you and you see me go like that, it's because I had a dark shadow that just passed over my eye, and I thought I was about to bump into something. Because my mind has not conformed to that thing in front of my eye. It hadn't always been there. And so I perceive it as a threat, as I'm about to bump into something. And so that's what I see. So in the same way, it's easy for any of us to become accustomed to things that we see all the time. It's easy for any of us to become accustomed to the things that everyone else is doing. Because when we see everyone else doing it, we decide that that is the norm. And once we have come to decide what norms exist, then we sign up for the norm. We forget about our status as peculiar people, not like the world, different from the world, called out. The church, the ecclesia, is the body of the called out ones, the people who have been called out. We don't belong among them. We belong among us. We are the called out ones. And it's important for us to remind ourselves by focusing, by concentrating on whose we are and what we therefore look like, what we do. Not doing the things of the world, not doing the things that seem ordinary, because there was a time when ordinary things were extraordinary, but they became ordinary by being repeated over and over and over. And Paul warns us against being okey-doked, about being duped, by being put to sleep by the thing that's always there. When you think about it, think about the things in your house, things in your church that have been in place for a long time. When someone moves one of those things, you notice. But as long as they remain in place, most of the time you don't pay much attention. I remember when these arrangements were brand new, and they were the woman who made them had been careful to make sure the symmetry was perfect on both of them. So they looked just the same all the time. But from moving them for Christmas and moving them for Easter and moving them for concerts and plays and fashion shows and moving them for one reason or another, they now no longer look the same. They no longer have the symmetry. So they could be somebody who has the talent could maybe restore them. Maybe we should take them back to the person who made them and ask her to fix them again. I think about that when I think about a Christian trying to find a way to restoration, trying to live a better life. I drive a Genesis, and I always take my Genesis for maintenance to the Hyundai dealer. When I drove a Ford, I took my Ford to the Ford dealer. When I drove a Chrysler, I took my Chrysler to the Chrysler dealer. I'm a stickler for taking it back to the manufacturer. And so when a human is out of form, is broken symmetry, don't take him to the judge. Take him to his manufacturer, take him to his maker. That's who made him in the first place, and that's who can tweak and make the corrections that need to be made, the adjustments. He's got the right tools for it. You know, you can't work on every car with a tool from another kind of car. You got to have tools designated for that car. I tried to change a battery in a Hyundai one time, and the Hyundai dealers have done everything they can to make sure that it's not easy. You don't just pop the hood and take off two clamps around the post and do that. Not with that car. It's a really strange battery with a bunch of posts under, and they even put it in a strange place. So it's hard to find. It's like a BMW. You find the battery in the back, in the trunk, under the floorboards. Yeah. So you know that. So the first time you went looking for your battery, where's the battery? Where's my battery? Yeah. So it is. But if it starts every time, you get used to it. But if it won't start, then you start looking for something to do about it. But you don't worry about it because it starts every time. It's become ordinary for it to start. But every 3 months or so, it needs a service. It needs attention. And on a regular basis, the mind needs attention. You need to think about thinking, and don't just think. And so it's in this process, from this process, that transformation emerges, according to Paul. As Ron Bell always laughs at me, I know it's Al Bunn who laughs at me when I beat on my Fitbit to make the time come up. So, yes, ma'am.
I was thinking about how the difference where we're not supposed to conform to this world. Right. We're supposed to be a peculiar generation. There's supposed to be something different about us that set us apart. But we have, it appears to me, we have tried to flip it the other way. So exactly.
What did she say?
Yeah, I was saying that I think this is what you were speaking of. We've tried to conform, to the world so that we can be accepted. Nobody wants to be rejected,
Versus we do everything we do so much to get
fit.
them to fit. Versus they supposed to come fit with us versus us going and fit with them.
Right.
Conforming to the world's way.
Right.
As Christians, we are supposed to be different. It's supposed to be say something about him.
Yeah, and it's the same thing about every Christian. That's something. It banishes pain. Mm-hmm. It holds back the rain. Mm-hmm. It's something within. That's the song. Mm-hmm. It's that peculiar incarnation. The Spirit of God has come to live in us, and the Spirit of God performs in a way that's consistent with the nature of God, with the character of God. So when you find yourself behaving in a manner contrary to the nature or the character or the will of God, then something within you ought to start saying, intruder alert. I've been boarded. I've been snuck. So something has happened to me, and it's stirred up the best part of me, and it made me behave like somebody else. So this mind renewal is a regular practice. It's a continuing practice. I have to remind myself to continue to be myself. Yes, sir.
The conforming to the world situation is people ain't gonna, sometimes you come into them, let's talk about God, they already got their mind made up already. They're not gonna accept it. And so the renewal of the mind is your responsibility. Right. That's where you come in at, because even though people are not accepting who God is, you can't change to make them satisfied with them, because you still got to please God. Because I know for a fact, I use myself as an example. All the time when I was on my job, I talk about God, and my supervisor, he just despises it. He comes all kind of crazy to say his mouth, but I don't let it upset me. I just feel sorry for him, because I say, well, for grace, I understand the situation I'm in, because while we in the world, we can't walk around blindfolded and think hardship ain't gonna come. Hardship's gonna come, because the world is not gonna accept you, because you are different. You open your mouth up, you already got a strike against you, because of who you are. But that's the good thing about it is you stay on the track, like we said earlier, about staying on the track and being conformed to God's way, you're gonna be all right. But yeah, hardship's gonna come. It's not gonna be easy. I mean, that's because you talk about God. I don't mean people gonna just bow down to you or start making conversations with you. A lot of times they walk away from you. They get mad at you, because I'm a be a witness myself. When Lady one time told me about God, I literally laid into her. But I didn't know the truth then. But once you know the truth, it changes your whole situation.
Yeah, and suppose God had not given you another chance to hear some crazy person coming to you telling you that a man died so you could live. And people kept telling you that. And kept telling you that.
That's where the grace come in now, because I could have been gone right then.
Yep.
I didn't deserve to live any further.
Right.
But God made it so that I could get another chance.
I beseech you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercy of God.
And that's what we need, mercy.
Yeah. And that's what we get. Mercy. It's not because of our goodness that not because we kept it all straight all the time. Not me, anyway. I don't know about the rest of you.
That's why we should be able to say the old saying, the things that I used to do, I don't do no more, because of the transformation of our mind, the renewing of our mind. We should be able to look at our lives. Now, we're not ready to go to glory right now, because we got a whole lot of work to do. Don't cut it short. But
See me with my eyes closed, I'm just sleeping. Don't bury me just because my eyes closed.
A little more time to pray.
Yeah, don't call graves just because I close my eyes.
Mm-hmm. Because we're renewed out, but at the same time, the sinner man, the world, should be able to look, something is going on with him or her.
Yeah. I taught you a word some time ago, entropy. It's the inclination of a thing to return to its original state. It's the encroachment of decay. It's even knowledge decays. Stuff you learned, stuff you used to know, you have a refresher course in that thing from time to time because you know it, you learned it, but you need your mind renewed. You need a refresher. And so it is with the body. Before you presented your body to God, it belonged to you. And you did with it whatever you wanted to do with it. And so that part of your nature didn't die. You just learned how to hold it under subjection. You learned how to control yourself. But if you stopped renewing your mind, you might find your old ways. Sam, remember how we used to? Your old ways trying to get the new person in you to come over to this side. Just come a little while. You can go back. You heard that voice? It's the reason transformation is better than conformation. CONFORMATION. So we don't seek to find a comfortable place and stay there, because that's another danger on its own. When you find, you decide. When I went to be pastor at Second Baptist Church in Metuchen in '92, they had such a beautiful building, sanctuary, red and white. It was really nice. But they had one problem. They had the organ in the wrong place. And so I moved it by myself. I was 40 then. I put the organ by myself where I thought the organ should be. Now, I've been the pastor for about 15 minutes. And so when the people came in and they saw that I had moved those instruments so close together, they just went crazy. It wasn't the only crazy thing I did, because I did some other stuff there. I made some other changes. They owned a building that housed a repair shop, a car repair place. And so there were always raggedy cars all around, cars that would never get fixed, and oil spills and all that, and the building was raggedy and rickety, but the church owned it and collected rent from it. So somehow the Lord and I convinced them to tear that building down, stop collecting that rent. Well, some of the most prominent people in the church who were okay givers were upset with me because I'm trying to make the building, the church's property, look good. We also owned a raggedy house next door to the church. It used to be the parsonage. This house was so raggedy, but you could stand outside and see inside through the cracks. Now, it's one thing to stand inside and see outside through the cracks, but you can stand outside and see inside because the building is run down. So this young soldier, there was a major in the Army at the time, used to changing things on a whim, convinced the church to tear that building down and create a lawn, and a green lawn, a wide green lawn in the parking lot. Now, the neighbors loved it, but the church members All they saw is income gone. I said, we'll be all right. We have to give. And we don't have to use, we're not in the real estate business. We're not in the property rental business. That's not what we do. We're in the business of, we're trying to make God look good. And it was a vast improvement, but it was not an easy change to make because they became so accustomed to seeing all those raggedy, broken down cars and looking at that little raggedy house next door that they decided it wasn't ugly. But just because you decide that it ain't ugly, don't mean it ain't ugly. And you can get used to that and get used to it like I got used to this thing in my eye, so I don't see it anymore. Or you could be transformed. If this really belongs to God, as R.C. Sproul said to me one time at a seminary in Jackson, Mississippi, how the place that you call God's house looks makes a statement about what you believe God deserves. How you carry your body, how you carry your mind, the things you find for your hands to do make a statement about what you believe about God. So, I believe that these flowers need rearrangement. And as long as I go without doing what I can do to make this look as good as it can look, the longer I have to deal with myself concerning a statement that I'm making about trying to make God look good. But they were expensive. Not as expensive as everlasting life. But we just got them. And so, you always try to change something. Yep. I'll call myself successful when I change you. Till that time, I'm going to keep on following directions and urging you to give your body to God and give your mind to God. And I'm not surprised that I didn't get to verses 3 through 13, talk about giving your life to God. But week after next, that's where we'll begin, because next week is Holy Week, and our turn to serve is on next Wednesday. You're welcome to join us, either live or in color in the room in person, or by way of YouTube. We'll be very happy to receive you. In the meantime, our next Bible study moment is tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock here at Olive Grove with Reverend Linda Holly. And then on Sunday morning, we'll have our Palm Sunday worship service and wave some palms and celebrate God and shout Hosanna. Join us if you will. YouTube, Facebook, parking lot, in person, in the sanctuary. We'll be glad to have you. In the meantime, God bless you and good night.